Good afternoon. Thank you all for being with us. I'm Wendy Goldberg. I think I know all of you, but I'll say for the purpose of the record, I'm the Executive Director of the Tri-Faith Initiative. We're so excited as staff to all be here together today for this Open Heart series to celebrate 2021. And I think it's a beautiful moment for us to realize how much beauty can exist in the midst of pain. And I hope that we take a moment, perhaps just as we start here, a moment of silence to honor all that we have lost and all that we are grieving and hurting for the pain that exists in the world. Thank you. And then to remember all that is beautiful and so many of you who have contributed to our ability to see the joy, the silver lining, the beauty, even in the midst of pain. And so many of you who have helped to create that beauty in relationship with each other, in the trust that we have in showing up for each other and with each other every day. And so the Tri-Faith Initiative, this year we had an art exhibit that was called You Are Tri-Faith. And if today isn't an exemplify that the faces on this screen and so many more, that we are a collectively Tri-Faith and everything that Tri-Faith will become. So as happened on the very first day when a few people showed up at a mosque following 9/11, showing up for each other matters. And so I want to thank you for your time today to be here. We're going to jump right in. We have a lot to talk about during this hour. It is an open conversation. So if you feel inspired by or wanting to add on to something that any of us add, because it brings up something for you, please, this is of the most open dialogues that we've had this year, all are welcome to share your voice. So please feel at any time that you can unmute yourself and contribute. I'm going to start with our Program and Education Director, Jeremy. Jeremy, my first question for you, and all of the staff are going to talk about this, but tell us, what are some of the highlights that you have want to celebrate from this last year?
Well, you all can hear me, right? Just make sure. All right. So I always find it especially beautiful when people come together and learn together. That's kind of my real passion, is where we learn about something together and then people start bringing their unique perspectives or life experiences into it, and it becomes a community learning process. I saw this happening quite a bit with a couple of different programs, but in particular with Abraham's Whiteboard and Abrahamic Religions and Dialogue, which both achieved a lot of success this year.
Anything in particular about those outcomes or success that you'll hold with you?
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, I gotta plug Abrahamic Religions and Dialogue coming up in January. This year, we piloted the very first one. It'll be a series of 3 classes. The first is about foundations of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The second one will be about some of the historical events that have impacted interfaith relations, particularly the Holocaust and the Crusades. And then the third, which is in development, is more about interfaith relations today. And it's been really beautiful to see people really able to engage with not only the content itself, but with the other people in the class. You know, again, seeing each other's perspectives. Sometimes it's a religious difference, sometimes it's age, sometimes it's gender or race or just different perspectives. And that has added a lot of value to that class. With Abraham's whiteboard, we have talked about really difficult topics like the transatlantic slave trade, or the backlash against Muslims after 9/11. And we've also talked about some really more silly or uplifting topics like how angels are portrayed in different religious traditions. And all of those have had deep value in one way or another. And I have always appreciated not only teaching everybody, but also learning from everybody who is part of those classes.
Speaking of that, Jeremy, can you give us kind of a frame? We're learning from our impact evaluation. What does our audience demographic look like? Who is showing up for these classes?
Yeah, so number one is we have a very highly educated audience on average. We have, almost 50% of our really reliable audience has a graduate degree of some kind. So we have highly experienced and educated folks. We also see people who are seeking new things all the time, right? People are always pushing me to start teaching about different religions, different topics, different things. Over and over again, we see that in the evaluations. Another thing I think that is important, and an important part of our growth stage right now, is that we're seeing a higher level of folks who are willing to offer some level of constructive feedback, which I think is an important process for Tri-Faith Initiative. We try to pride ourselves on seeing from different perspectives, trying to improve ourselves and our communities, and that takes people being open with each other. The average person is, we have significant numbers, especially of Christians and Jewish folks. And I think about half are not affiliated with any of the congregations on the Tri-Faith Commons.
Thank you. Feel free to pipe in further, especially on this next question. But one of the courses that I think has really evolved this year is Making the Familiar Strange. Jeremy, before we move on to ask Trish about her experience with that, can you tell us about what you imagined as we started that more than a year ago?
Well, I really imagine this as being an opportunity for a couple of things. Okay, firstly, the title says most of what is intended. We take a very familiar story or familiar concept, and someone with a unique perspective shares, and we kind of get to practice our perspective taking. There's also an intention to bring someone who is a non-clergy, non-traditional leader, I guess, of a congregation, and have them take the center stage of teaching around this. Finally, this also gives an opportunity for the people there to not only discuss the ideas that are brought up, because that's again a very intentional part of it, but also that people have an opportunity to meet someone new who is invested in Tri-Faith Initiative in some way, and they're able to kind of build relationships in another way. Everyone needs something a little bit different. We have these 3 communities on the Commons, as well as others outside the Commons, and that is a wide range of people, a diversity of voices and ideas, and we can gain a lot by thinking about reaching as many folks as we can in that way. And this is one way that we do it.
Thank you.
And I do hope Allie talks a little bit about her experiences with it when she's...
Great. Let's go to her in a minute. But first, Trish, brave soul. you prepared, you did a bunch of teaching. It was a beautiful session. Tell us about your experience leading Making the Familiar Strange.
Oh, of course. First of all, it was a pleasure. And I see Lee on the call. So I was inspired by her story that she told and shared for Making the Familiar Strange. That was a beautiful session as well. I love that Jeremy said that they were looking for non-clergy, non-traditional leaders. I'm certainly in that category. And for me, what was fun about it, and honestly very meaningful, I have to say when I was first asked, I was hesitant for two reasons. First, because when, the idea of what's your favorite story or what story would you want to share? And immediately I thought, oh, I need to share an Old Testament or, the Hebrew scripture stories, not the Greek scripture stories. And so I realized I was kind of putting myself in a box there. And when I kind of let go of that, I went, I think one of the things we do when we get together is share our different faith journeys, and not only what we see as similar in the shared Abrahamic faiths and other faith journeys, but also, kind of celebrating our differences. So I ended up choosing a story from the Greek scriptures, and one that's not honestly told that often. So the other fun part about that is I reached out to my fellow Christians, my small group, and also other folks that I'm in relationship with, and we talk about our faith on a regular basis and ask them about their favorite stories. So even before I had the opportunity to get on, what was really cool, it was the discussions I had leading up to that and those ideas around those stories. And it opened up other things to talk about with groups that I'm already a part of. So I was very grateful for that expansion, if you will, in those circles. So that was a beautiful thing. But I think the most interesting thing was the opportunity to go and pick the story, and then really, and it was short, purposefully, by the way, to read it and then go out and really, I had some opinions about it, but really look for commentary on it and study it from different perspectives, not just a Christian perspective, but I did look at in that there, Christianity is a spectrum like we all have. So I did look at a conservative approach and a progressive idea of that and interpretation and commentary. And then I found some other commentary that, came up from other, from some rabbis that I found and studied a little bit. So that was also very interesting. I think the best part of leading it was the interaction with the people attending and their thoughts and ideas around it and what they brought to the table. That truly made the experience richer and more compelling and more interesting. So I think that's what I enjoyed the most.
Thank you so much. And your beautiful segue for Lee to tell us next about her experience and the library as well, Lee. We'd love to hear about you and celebrate all you're contributing. You're muted.
Okay, I just realized. Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, I thank you, Trish, for those compliments. So happy when we can get inspiration from each other and pass it on to the next person, and as I'm sure you have done. For my, to begin with, Making the Familiar Strange, I shared a favorite biblical story about the story of Ruth. We did ask people to read Ruth beforehand and that was very useful because I added midrash, or the story between the lines, where you take the words and you separate them and you interject another phrase in there or thought. This then made the familiar strange by making it a particularly Jewish way of telling the story. Midrash adds meaning and deepens our understanding. In a parallel fashion, I introduced my own interruptions of the story, beginning by adding the Jewish prayer for study in Hebrew and in English. I asked those listening to add them to the story if they had prayers in their tradition that they knew by heart. In this way, we shared our traditions, experiencing our diversity together, making the strange familiar. Now to the Tri-Faith Library. The Tri-Faith Library project team has been very active, particularly since May, by working at the Temple Israel's library, one of the 4 libraries that come together to compose the Tri-Faith Library. Our intent was to download a list of the books that the Temple Israel has in its library. We soon realized that the books needed organization if we were to be able to find any desired book. So we spent a long time organizing all the books by type before we could download the titles. That accomplished, we downloaded information on the over 2,000 books from Temple's library. You can find those titles and see what books we have at our shared Tri-Faith online website, trifaith.libib.com. Presently, we are labeling the bookshelves where books are grouped together by topic. We are using lovely, simple labels that can be easily moved if necessary. The Temple Library is still a work in progress. It is an amazing and comfortable library space with a wall of windows overlooking the Tri-Faith campus. Please visit and see for yourselves.
Wow. Which is a lovely transit. Thank you, Lee. We're excited to see your impact on each of the collections. So thank you so much for your time and your leadership. Interestingly, we're going to talk about the garden next, and all the gardeners are in the library. So that was, I don't know, divine intervention. Did you know that, guys? Eileen, can you unmute the library folks, and Bonnie too? I want this to kind of be a conversation. I don't know who wants to go first. It's hard to pick among the leaders of leaders.
I want Bonnie to go first.
Okay, Bonnie. Bonnie, give us the Cliff Notes version of your daily tasks of leadership in the garden, and what that has done to fill your bucket this year.
Well, this year and last year too, we're brand new. People forget that we have not even been in this space for 3 years yet. It won't be till Mother's Day of next year that we will have been in that space. So if you want to see miracle workers among you, look at those people in the library. These people, I don't even know how much to tell you about how fabulous everybody is. And they, we talk about leaders, but every single person that comes out there finds a niche and takes it on and takes responsibility for it. Kathy is, we just kind of started reconfiguring a bunch of people into their thing. Kathy has always been the person who helps us kind of document and take care of our produce. Eileen actually started weighing our produce so that we could actually keep track of it. Gail Knapp is taking care of things. Marcia Bloom. I mean, every single person out there has taken a leadership role. So we're all a bunch of leaders, and I am proud of them, and I wish that we could have more people out there with us. There's nothing that makes any of us happier. I think I'm looking at you people in the library. There's nothing I think that makes us happier than being together with our Tri-Faith partners. And every time it happens, it's a little miracle. So yes, it's beautiful. Does anybody have any questions for me? I'd be glad to answer. I could talk about the garden and the orchard for the rest of my life, so be careful.
So how about Eileen and Kathy and Chris? Is that who's there with you?
Yeah.
Share for us a sentence or two about how working in the garden has impacted your connection to Tri-Faith, or relationships to others beyond Temple Israel.
Well, we have other wonderful garden members. As was already mentioned, we have Marcia, who is just a wonderful person to work with. We were working this morning in the garden, although a lot of people think we're done, but we're not done. We're still working in the garden. And then we have Judy and Roger. They're new this year. We love their help. Roger is great to have around, and trying to see who else is up there from the garden, but there is so many people, and oh yeah, Tamer's there. And so actually we have all faiths represented on
Right.
this.
Tell us about the number. What's how much produce have you grown?
Well, we went over a ton, which was originally our goal, and we had about 2,500 pounds that we donated this year.
And where did they go? Where did the produce go?
So once a month, the church countryside has their pantry. So once a month we give produce there. And then we have the Intercultural Senior Center. We love going there. We have what? Stephen Center, and then Shabbat House. And Clare Memorial. Occasionally we still bring things to Clare Memorial. So those are the individuals who are happy to get our produce and share it with the community. Beautiful.
Taylor, you've been such a spiritual connection to the land and to this work feels like the wrong devotion, right? To this devotional project. Tell us, what is your connection to this project?
Thank you, Wendy. I was just really honored and blessed on behalf of my people. I'm a member of the Omaha tribe, and somewhere there was a good thought, a good kernel of inspiration, so to speak. And I got contacted by Bonnie and some of the others about sharing some of our agricultural lifeways regarding the three sisters, corn, bean, and squash, which is kind of universal to most indigenous peoples. But as we know, for all of us who live in this area around Nebraska, the word is Nibadaska. It means flat water. And we know that it gets very windy during the course of the growing season. So the Omahas, we have a fourth sister, the sunflower, and for well over 1,000 years, the Three Sisters has nourished the indigenous peoples and helped us survive near genocide, and allowed us to still be here today. And so with that invitation, I was taught by my elders that if somebody comes with a full heart and the right questions and open eyes, then you're supposed to say yes. So I was fortunate to say yes, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone at the garden for welcoming me and all the ways of our indigenous peoples, and respecting them, and having an opening ceremony and sort of a closing ceremony. It was just it was a wonderful beginning, and I hope this is the start of a long-standing relationship, so that we can all understand each other's cultures and respect and love each other more.
Thank you so much. Tamir, I'm not sure if you're in a place that you can come on to video to share. Tamir is joined us more recently and has been involved in the garden in innovative ways. And also has been willing to share his story. So could you tell us, in a few sentences, what this connection has meant to you?
Oh, I'd love to. Thanks, Wendy. So it's been special for me in the sense that I just moved to Omaha. I haven't even been here. My wife and I moved here in April, and I really don't know. I didn't know anybody in Omaha. And I just, went out, tri-faith, since I'm in an interfaith marriage, my wife is Christian, I'm Muslim. That's how we stumbled across tri-faith when we were, my wife was online, and she is interested in interfaith things, being with our marriage. And so she found tri-faith, and then we attended the virtual grand opening back during the pandemic. And then when we moved here, I was just so excited. I couldn't wait. Of course, it was in the middle of the pandemic, so I couldn't go, to the mosque or anything. But then the first event I went to was Kebabs with Khan, and I was just so excited. And I told Wendy about my background, what I do for a living, and my work with solar. And then she connected me with Bonnie. And then I went out and met Bonnie and then all the people at the garden. And I just had a great time. Even though I'm not a real gardener, I actually started a garden in my backyard because of, you know, Bonnie and all the energy out there from all the gardeners. So it was the first garden I've had since I was, you know, my parents used to do it, but I've never thought about doing it. And then anyway, so then the solar panel, and I just loved working on that project. And then Bonnie introduced me to her husband, Martin. And that was actually when she invited to the temple, which was great. And that's when I met Martin. And then, and that's been a great friendship for me too. So Martin and I are just, you know, I mean, I feel like I've known Martin forever, and just me moving to Omaha and meeting a welcoming, you know, it was just such a welcoming, the whole thing is just beautiful. And I just, it couldn't have worked out better for my wife and I, and I can't help but think it was just meant to be. I mean, you know, I'm from the East Coast, and I don't know how I ended up in Omaha, but anyway, I think one of the reasons, you know, God brought me here is destiny, because Tri-Faith is just, it's working out great for me. So it's a highlight of our move, and I look forward to many, many more years of all the relationships and getting to know more and more people out there.
Thank you. Beautiful. A really special commemorative moment that we had this year was the 20th anniversary of 9/11. 9/11 being the impetus for us being inspired to be in relationship together and to build trust and understanding and the need for that in our world. And I want to personally thank Vic and Rebecca and Norhan for sharing their stories, and equally to Sierra, who really beautifully crafted and shine to tell her ability to craft the stories together very artistically and make a very moving experience for all of us. So Sierra, fill us in on what that was and is.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, I do. For me, it was just so exciting that this was a year that we could bring folks back to the Commons. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the picnic too. Just 2021 was an exciting year to bring folks back to the Commons. This fall, we hosted 2 incredible events that did that. In August, we celebrated the return of the picnic on the Commons. We had food trucks, interactive art installations, live entertainment, and we unveiled our Together public art picnic table project, and then also the You Are Tri-Faith interactive identity exhibit. So that was a great welcoming of folks back to the Commons. And then, as Wendy said, about 6 weeks later, we hosted the 20th anniversary of 9/11 event that was called Unity and Hope, 20 years after 9/11. And it honored memories and mourning. It celebrated identity and explored how the events in the aftermath of 9/11 really shifted our faith and the history of the world. So this is such a special experience for me. For the storytelling event, Wendy and I interviewed Vic and Norhan and Rebecca. Vic's from Temple Israel, Rebecca's from Countryside, Norhan's from AMI, different age groups, generations. So it's really interesting to just hear about their faith stories, how 9/11 impacted them in different ways, and what Tri-Faith, what the hope of this bold endeavor really means to them. So then I got to sit down and weave those stories together into the script that they shared with you all that night. I so enjoyed that whole process, and I'm just feel so honored to be entrusted with those stories. It meant a lot to me to be trusted with that and to be able to share it with everyone. I think this was such a powerful example of what storytelling can do, and that so much of the power of the work that we're doing is coming from your stories, right? It's the interactions that you're having, the relationships you're building, the stories that you're creating here. So I just think it was such a powerful example of our work and what we can accomplish by bringing people together.
Thank you. That really leads into a harder moment that we had, and figuring out how to navigate the pain of the world, what is happening in Israel and Palestine, and whether we are, or Black Lives Matter, or all of the things that we are lamenting in this world, and how will we come to hear each other. I am a bold fan of Brene Brown, and she does have a new book out called Atlas of the Heart. I have been reading much of it and encourage you to do the same. I'm sure you'll hear me talking about it more in the coming weeks and months, but I'm really inspired by this rethinking of empathy, that we can't really ever walk in someone else's shoes. We each have our own lens, and a metaphor of walking in someone's shoes, perhaps even through snow. If I was to walk over your footprints in the snow, then you wouldn't see those footprints anymore. And so how instead do we walk alongside of someone? And that moves me to this place in our response, my particular response to the call of us having a unified statement around Israel and Palestine, and my pushback to say, we need to help create a world where we do straight talk, where we agree that there can be two truths at the same time, and that we can listen to someone else's story, even if it's different than ours, and hear truth in it, to believe it to be a true story. And so not just to hear each other's stories, but to hear each other's truths is a goal of ours. And religiously speaking, that's complicated sometimes. Sometimes we get so ingrained in our own rituals and traditions and teachings of right, and political rightness, and frustration with those people who aren't masking or vaccinating or whatever it is. And I'm constantly reminded to try to have the courage to understand that I don't know the baggage that the person who I'm listening to is carrying, and they don't know mine. And even though I am particularly vulnerable and transparent, I'm carrying things you all don't know, and that is true for all of us. And yet, Jeremy often encourages and pushes me to believe and to lead in such a way that if we don't start with trust, not earned trust, but start with trust, we have a really big road ahead of us. So I think we're doing a great job in that, and in really trying to hear those stories. And today is a perfect example. But this concept of straight talk is important work, and is a big road ahead of us. It leads into this conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion, freedom of thought and belief, and where we have a potential to have an impact beyond the Tri-Faith Commons and including the Tri-Faith Commons. And Eric, I would love you to tell this audience a bit about some of that outreach that we're doing and curriculum that we're creating in thought leadership.
For sure. Before that, though, I just want to kind of reflect on how, with all these volunteers and storytellers, how this mighty small staff has been able to do so much this past year. And literally the crux of our work is just connecting people, having them understand, and I find that beautiful. So quick moment of reflection. I'm a bit proud of this team and this initiative. And just want to say that out. So I want to tell you all a little bit about religious other inclusion. And we have really found, I think, a niche where we're asking the question, hey, we know how to deal with people that have identity of, like me, for example. They know, HR knows how to deal with me as a Latino, knows how to deal with me as a veteran. But we're asking the question, how do you deal with someone who, if I come at you as a Catholic, or a Muslim, or somebody that is a religion from not the mainstream? And whenever I do pose that question to some of the people, some of the corporations, businesses, organizations out there, they're not quite sure how to answer that. So we kind of realized maybe there's some educating that we can do when it comes around the faith identity in the workplace. So ROI, Religious Other Inclusion, is our answer, and it's a curriculum that we're building. Jeremy, our education director, doing the heavy lifting there, and as well as Allie and such. And we're teaching them about religious literacy, because I think it really starts with having culturally competent managers. So if they know what basic things like which holidays are going out throughout the year, not just from Christianity, but Judaism, from Islam, from other religions. Just getting them culturally competent so they know what questions to ask their employees, how to accommodate their identity in the workplace. So that's one big part of it, is that religious literacy. Another big part of it is just standard inclusion strategy, how to create that space for your employees to bring their full authentic selves. And that's the second pillar of this ROI curriculum and initiative that they're really taking on. And I think it's going to just grow so much in 22. And then finally, when it comes to, so you got inclusion strategy, you got the religious literacy, and then the last one, legal issues. So we really got to talk dollars and cents. And when it comes to legal issues, we're finding that a lot of organizations are running into legal trouble and getting sued over not being able to accommodate or failing to or having oversights. And that's costing them a lot of money. So I think Jeremy does a great job when it comes to putting some case statements in front of people, letting them know what the ramifications of these legal issues are and how companies can make sure that they have the right policies and procedures in place so they don't run into these issues. So a quick shout out to, again, to everybody on Trifecta, but specifically Jeremy and Andy for putting this curriculum together. And if anybody here knows of any companies that are just at the forefront of or that can benefit from some of our services, please connect them to us.
Jeremy, I just thank you so much, Eric. Jeremy, I wanted just to give you a window into this conversation. Why is this, other than us being really transparent with this audience, that we are an operational startup, that we are looking to find ways to be responsible for financial sustainability of this organization? Why does the model of co-location and the founder's dream, why does that connect to us reaching beyond the Tri-Faith Commons for this conversation around religious other inclusion?
So I'll answer in two ways. Number one is that when we're thinking about being inclusive of other people, inclusive of other religions, having better relationships and understanding across religious lines, which is an important part of our mission statement, we have to think about where are people, right? Most people spend fewer than just a few hours at church or at synagogue or at the mosque, but many people spend 40 plus hours at the workplace. If people are going to feel comfortable not only being themselves, including their religious selves in their everyday lives and with others, then they need to know how to do that properly in the workplace. Number two, there are a lot of lessons that have been learned in the process of this project from its founding to today. The good and the beautiful and the ugly have all been very valuable to understanding how to build bridges between different people, how to create very committed communities or organizations. Some of the things that Wendy talked about, like making sure that we both start with trust and continue to build it with people, or that we learn how to have conversations that do have some conflict in them, that we commit ourselves together to some kind of vision and commitment to the community. These are all things that are deeply part of the Tri-Faith story. And whether it is about religion or whether it is about other forms of identity or whether it's about different organizations coming together, we have a lot that we can offer this community and to some extent this world about how to do good collaboration. So I think those two pieces are really key for ROI or religious other inclusions process with society and the community. Thank you.
Eric, can you expand a little bit and share with this group who might not have listened to the podcast yet? Can you tell us a little bit about the podcast and perhaps even just personally, one of the episodes maybe that has stuck with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the podcast. So big surprise during COVID, we started a podcast. We try to find ways that we can reach out into the audience, make it easy for us to have access to some of the work that we've been doing. So we created the ROI podcast, or the Religion at Work podcast is what we renamed it to. So we did 8 in the past year. So that was our season, which reminds me, Jeremy, we got to do a recap episode. But we reached out to academics, to workplace professionals. We did topics like embracing religious diversity at work, religious other inclusion, of course, healing empathy and religious accommodations. I remember one, fostering the ability to disagree, which I think is very, very important. And we had people like Joe Gernstein, Dr. Jody Benenson, Dr. Raymond Chu, really Christy Navin Warren, really just talented, smart people that have been studying and researching these topics. I will say my favorite one though was an earlier one. One of our earliest, I think this was the very first one we actually recorded, was embracing religious diversity at work with Faraz Siddiqui. So those of you that have not heard of her, so she's over at Salesforce National or Corporate, and she started an interfaith, or ERG, so Employee Resource Group, but they called it Faith Force. And she started it, she told her story. She's a Pakistani Muslim that grew up, she shared about her childhood, how she got to be at Salesforce, the challenges and the trials and tribulations that she had to go through just to get her leadership to buy into the idea that faith is an identity and faith is an ERG that just needs to be in a workplace, especially a multinational corporation like Salesforce, and a huge one. And she's an amazing person. I would love for all of you, go check out our Religion at Work. It's on our website. It's our work. Head down there. Sierra's already put a link in the chat box there. Jump on in. You want to listen, give that one a listen. It's a great story and a great example of how to create space for faith and religious identity in the workplace. It really is a model. It's an amazing one, and I just enjoyed that conversation.
Thank you. So Allie, I would love, thank you both for that and all the work that you're doing. I think that I'm not sure that we're going to get to be able to talk about all of the things that we're dreaming about next year, but I assure you that this religious other inclusion curriculum is really going to be come to fruition and get more attention of many. And so we'd love your support on that in the coming year. Allie has joined our staff this year. Allie, tell us a little bit about all the places you have your fingers.
Sure. Well, I'll mention just a couple of them. I know that we've got a lot going on in our education and program department, as I'm sure people have gotten a little bit of a feel for in this conversation. But as Wendy mentioned, 2021 has been the start of my time on this staff, which I joined in April after working for churches for a few years. And on this staff, as Jeremy had mentioned, one of the things I've been doing is hosting our Making the Familiar Strange program, which you already heard about from Trish and Lee. And I know in that it's always a privilege to learn from lay members of our partner congregations as they lead discussions that look at pieces of their scriptures with fresh eyes. And I love the enthusiasm and ideas that our presenters bring to that are always really refreshing and surprising views on their scriptures. So that's been amazing. But besides Making the Familiar Strange, another one of my primary responsibilities has been revising, expanding, and coordinating tours, which have undergone exciting developments this year. We offer both a tour introducing people to the Commons, the Tri-Faith Commons, and to our organization. And that tour takes place at the Tri-Faith Center. And then we also offer tours of our partner congregations where they provide the docents and handle some of the details But having facilitated some of our introductory tours, I got to share our story and help build some really basic religious literacy in some of the groups that have visited us, both adults and children. And people are consistently in awe when they see our campus for the first time. One of the moments that always sticks with our visitors is when they see the reflection room. So if anybody on this call hasn't seen our reflection room yet, then I encourage you to come visit the Tri-Faith Center. But the reflection room is where our visitors get a beautifully framed view of each of our partner congregations and can see this visual, physical symbol of different religions in a committed relationship with one another. And of course, the visitors, the groups usually stop to take a group picture at that point because of the scenery, but that's also when these efforts and what they learn about on the tours really clicks for them. So getting to see how people are impressed with our nonprofit and our campus and the kind of work that goes on here has been a real inspiration for me. And I think I'll leave that there. But I'm also definitely excited for the ways that these kinds of things are going to continue to grow.
Thank you. Something that has not been formally announced, but is something that's exciting for all of you to know, is that the governor has an award called Rising Star Award, and it is given to organizations in the state that are thought of as a tour destination. And the Tri-Faith Initiative will be receiving the Rising Star Award, and we are excited to be able to celebrate that publicly in the coming months. And so thank you to Carol Russell, who is a member of Countryside Community Church, who nominated us for that award. So that's exciting, and hopefully will be part of what we are doing to bring more people to witness the beauty of what we have created. I would like to hear a little bit from Jason, one of our interns, who is he is the quiet magic behind a lot of curriculum research that has come out. And I know that Jeremy and Allie really support all you do, but Jason, give us a little snapshot of what it's like to be behind the screen, behind the curtain.
Okay, well, I am just here to support research queries and trying to get data together for some very interesting things involving tri-faith and multi-faith environments, including hopefully, if you have a chance to get involved with Abrahamic Religions and Dialogue 2 coming up. I'm putting together a lot of the information behind the scenes for that. So you might actually see me in front of the screen for it, but definitely some of my work will be part of the product there. And it's very much been my life to be kind of in the background. I spent 20 years in the Air Force working in military intelligence. So as you might expect, it means kind of being in the background and kind of listening and just getting a feel for the environment. And the time that I spend in the office environment here and talking to the staff and being involved in activities here has given me a kind of a good bead on just how important and necessary the work is here to bring the ideas and the concepts of just how to show acceptance that's already in place and how to bring acceptance that isn't quite there yet to the Omaha community and to to the world at large, but within the bounds of the multi-faith environment. And I think that I mean, I've seen a lot of good work here, and I've been putting together a lot of materials, and I'm hoping to see some more projects put together before my internship ends. And afterwards, I may not be officially in the background, but I will try to do my best to help out as a member of the community, as someone who lives here in Omaha and works here and is part of the multi-faith and multicultural environment here. I'd love to see expansion and growth.
Thank you so much. So speaking of visionary leaders, Ali Khan, thank you for your leadership, for agreeing to stay on for a third year as our board chair. That's a formal announcement for those of you who might not know. And our resident expert on all things pandemic. We won't ask you to lean too far into there, but anything you'd like to tell us about whether or not we're going to get any closer to life as normal. We of course always like to hear, but only if you have good news. And but we would love, I would love to celebrate your example that as staff, we have noticed that each time we put out a call to say we need to be financially stable, Ollie responds by doubling or tripling his commitment financially to our organization. So in addition to your time and your talent, you have really put your dollars behind our work as well. And it matters. And I really appreciate that. So tell us a little bit about your why and what has this year meant for you in your participation with our work.
Wendy, that's very generous of you. And I think I really should be spending a little bit of time talking about you and your why and what you have done for this institution over the last very, very difficult year. But let me do the intersection for me of pandemic, which is where you started, and faith. And I believe earlier you talked about the wonderful event that was hosted by Tri-Faith around 9/11. And to me, given my life in public health, it coincides so much with the work you do in Tri-Faith because it's about choices, right? We can choose to make different choices on how we interact with other people. Do we celebrate our differences? Do we have frank conversations with each other? Or do we increasingly become balkanized and split into our separate tribes, so it may be? And for me, Tri-Faith has been this example in our community and an example for communities everywhere where we chose differently in our community of what we can do. And that's what inspires me. During the pandemic, we've seen, I think about, and Wendy, you can correct me, I think somewhere between 25 and 30% of people have said that they've become closer to their religious faith. The 2/3 are like, whatever. But at least a quarter or so have said, and how do we take that and leverage that? And we've seen this in our congregations, right? All of a sudden opening our doors out to outside our buildings, right? It's like our doors are open to the world thanks to this thing called Zoom. How do we continue that to invite people into this amazing, bold, crazy experiment called Tri-Faith to say, come and join us in this work, and how wherever you are to think about religion as you think broadly about diversity, inclusion, equity, and justice in our communities, to think about religion in those interactions. That's what inspires me, and that's my why, which is why you didn't have to do too much sort of arm wrestling to get me to say, yes, I'd love to be part of this organization again for a year, and why it doesn't take much to say, this is, one of the primary organizations I want to financially support, because I believe in what you do and what having these frank conversations can do for our communities. I just see so much division. And for me, Tri-Faith is the opposite of division. It's truly addition, and addition in a way where 1 + 1 = 3, not where 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. But I think 1 + 1 + 1 equals at least 4, 5, 6, or 7 in our case of bringing those communities together. And again, Wendy, thank you so much for your leadership of Tri-Faith for the last year. All these wonderful stories that I'm hearing during the course of this afternoon, a lot of them have a thread. That thread that connects and weaves these together is you and your leadership. So thank you for that, Wendy.
Thank you. Oh, this is fun. What a gift of this season for us to have taken this time today to reflect together, to celebrate all that we have accomplished together. It is very important to me that we pause in closing here to celebrate first the staff. Our staff is smaller than it has been, and they are taxed, and they contribute daily, so far beyond my expectations. And if you don't already know that I show up with big expectations every day, then today you learned that I do. And they do not disappoint any day. I also think we have worked really hard, and we continue to work hard to create an atmosphere of psychological safety. And what I mean by that is that we are working hard to create spaces where we can be authentically ourselves, where we can disagree, where we can listen for each other's perspective. And it's hard work, and we can continue to do better. And I hope that we hold each other accountable to continue that. And in that role, I ask that all of us continue to have our board, our communities and our city, our country, and our world in our prayers, and that thoughts and prayers are not enough. We need thoughts and prayers, but man, we need you to show up with your pocketbook, and we need you to show up with your voice as influencers, and that we will only be as strong together as you help us to be. So if you have not yet given in our annual campaign, I ask you to do that. If you have, and you have the capacity to give more, I ask you to do that. If you have not asked your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors, your enemies to show up with you or to show up financially, I ask you to do that as well. And I'm not taking it lightly when I say the success and possibility of our future is in your hands financially. We do not have a clear path forward financially, and we do need your help. So if you want to know more about that, or you want to be involved in helping us reach financial stability, we need that. And I invite you into that conversation, and may we go from strength to strength. Thank you for showing up today. Take care.